everyone, and welcome to China EVs and More, where my co-host, Lei Xing, and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the China EV, AV, and mobility sectors. We will open the room up at around the 40-minute mark to anyone who's keen to ask us any questions. What Lei and I discuss today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. If you enjoy this room, please help us get the word out to other enthusiasts. And of course, tune in again next week. My name is Tu Li, and I am the managing director at Sino Auto Insights, a Beijing-based consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinoautoinsights.com, which of course, I encourage you all to do. Hey, Lei, can you please introduce yourself?
Hey, Tu. Yes, I'm your co-host, Lei Xing, former chief editor of China Auto Review. This is episode number 55. Huge week of announcements from legacy automakers around the world.
Around the world.
Carlos Tavares vows to move fast. Jim Farley splits Ford. RJ apologizes.
Vows to move fast. They're all vowing to move fast.
I just realized there's total of five legacy automakers that made announcements. So obviously Stellantis, Ford, Opel being part of Stellantis, and Hyundai Kia. They had their sort of capital markets day where they announced huge numbers and all pointing to 2030. Okay, we heard the auto earnings, the first of the big three to announce Q4 in 2021 earnings on last Friday, and there's some preliminary EV sales numbers that came out. So where do you want to start?
So let me add two things to what you just announced. Panasonic also has announced that they're going to add capacity in Japan and are looking at adding capacity in or around Texas. And it's going to be specifically, I believe, for the 4680 battery, which should probably start mass production sometime next year. So I think that's a pretty big deal. And you know, and I know Cheng Lu from Too Simple, he's stepping down as the CEO. We're told this is planned, so no surprises there. But I wanted to congratulate him. He's done a terrific job steering Too Simple past IPO. And, you know, now he's got some flexibility, I believe. He's got a few bucks in his pocket. So I want to congratulate Chang on his successful steering of Too Simple. It'll be interesting to see how the management change, because it's not just one management change, it's a few different management changes affects their strategy. So look forward to following them even more in the future.
I had the privilege of interviewing Cheng earlier this year, just right after CES. So where he made that 0 to 1 moment comment about the driver out. That was a huge milestone. And also speaking of Texas, so Giga Berlin's supposed to have an announcement tomorrow. And I just had someone ask me, is this going to mean less production out of Shanghai? And I said, this is some guy from a supplier. And I said, no, because Berlin's not going to ramp up, like fast, right? So Shanghai will still be a significant in terms of, at full capacity, at least this year, right?
If Tesla can maintain supply of chips and batteries in China, that thing is going to be running 110% the whole year.
And this is the crazy thing, right? This is all of a sudden. So 2020, the pandemic, 2021, the chip crunch, and now we're facing this war situation that's all of a sudden again disrupted. It was looking sunny. Now it's all of a sudden it's cloudy, right? And we've seen most of the European, at least the European and some Japanese automakers announce production stoppage and sales and suspending sales into Russia, right? And we know Great Wall and Chery. Great Wall has a plan in Russia. We haven't heard from Great Wall on what they're going to do, but right in China specifically, we've seen companies raising prices, right? WM Motor did that. Great Wall's Aura announced it. and some other ones. Yep, some
Tesla
other
did
ones.
it.
And we just heard this whole debacle from Rivian. This crisis that they experienced the last few days. But there's, as a CEO,
I
right?
let me comment on
It's,
that.
I mean, on the one hand, you got to face this cost pressure, and on the other hand, you got to make customers happy. Yeah, it's a tough job, I tell you, right?
I, I but but that move to me points to him looking at quarter to quarter, and I think they thought they could contain the backlash potentially because we're talking 17 and 20%.
As high as
So
20%.
not
Yeah.
insignificant. I don't know his internal folks, his comms people. Somebody screwed up, right? Because 17 and 20% increases in prices just out of nowhere. It is like multiple departments didn't do their jobs, and rather than own it or try to get it back somehow on the operations side, they wanted to pass more than 100% of the cost change over to the customer because that's more than 100%. You know, so
they're still a startup. There's still growing pains. You know, the almost the exact same thing happened to Xpeng when they started delivering the G3 back in 2019. They had a similar situation where the price was, you know, it changed and it irked some customers. But at the end, you know, it worked out. But I don't know. I mean, there's some people saying that half the people who've gotten orders have canceled. I don't know.
cancel
That
them.
might not be true, but
Yeah.
yeah, if I was a customer, I'd be pissed.
So I heard from a trusted source, Lay, that because they pushed a lot of their initial ramp production into 2022, and so the battery supplier or a couple of other suppliers had charged them penalties for not taking those orders, those original orders that they had forecasted, right? And so they had taken on this huge charge for delaying production effectively, right? And so that's what happened with NIO early. Remember when they were not able to ramp production very well? JAC charged them a bunch of money for not filling their master production schedule. So when these delays happen, it's not just a customer thing, it's an operations nightmare because you've already hired X number of people based on this forecast that you did 18, 24 months ago, and then you're not able to fulfill that demand either because of engineering issues, quality issues, manufacturing issues. So you push it out, but these suppliers have already ordered that material to build parts for you. And so they're not going to be sitting on it because they'll go bankrupt within, 8-9 months if every OEM did that to them. So like you said, growing pains from a startup, but I'm really surprised that they didn't handle this better because Rivian seems to be very image conscious, right?
Yeah, and
that's the only thing that I'll say about it.
And this is a tough game. The automotive manufacturing is a tough game no matter what. Without a pandemic, without the chip crunch, right? It's a tough game, and now you're adding on top of all these things that are happening that are out of your control, right? All the raw material prices going up and manufacturing difficulty itself. And that's why we heard this week from Jim Farley and Carlos Tavares. And I think I got the same message from both of these guys, that at least one of the messages was, we're going to learn from you, the startups, but you're going to have to learn from us because of the complexity, because of scaling up. We've had that experience, and we're going to learn from you faster to beat you. Carlos and Jim, basically, they said exactly the same thing about speed. And that's why you see, right, Jim did what Ford did, right? The Model E and the Ford Blue. And similarly for Carlos, right, he's like, the challenges will be, for the new entrants is high volume production. Once you get into the millions, right? The rigorous quality, the complexity. So
It doesn't, and let me add really quickly, Lay. The complexity is not linear as you add quantity. It is exponential, right? Because so the manufacturing expertise that these guys have is second to none, and so we already know that manufacturing is tough because Elon told us it's tough. So you give them a lot of credit, and the one thing that since you've known me, Lay, the one thing I've said is technology guys need to take on management role and leadership positions at these companies
Doug Field.
if we're to see, yes, if we're to see they truly mean it. And so two things. There's that 4-minute video that Ford did to launch this kind of reorg for their company. I think it was cool that Hao Tai-tang was the second person on the video. Farley led it out, and then Hao Tai-tang, which is, Vietnamese American. So that's pretty cool because I think he's the highest ranking Vietnamese ethnically in any automotive management team. So that's super cool, inspiring for me and my kids anyway.
Yeah, for Asians overall,
and then
as well. And even Kumar, right? Yeah. So
yeah, Kumar. So this. Kumar was head of PD in China for a few years.
Yeah, had the China exposure.
And
Lawler was the China
CFO
CEO for a few years in the early teens.
Yeah. So and then Kirsten, head of human resources, she was working here. They all worked at Ford when I was at Ford in Shanghai a long time ago.
And that Model E is basically pooling, I think, team medicine, right? Team medicine. And I think in the press release, there was a paragraph that mentioned also pulling some of the teams out of China. They also have a team down in China, somewhere like a local Edison for the electric,
So this is Doug Field's story, and why I want to point it out.
Slippers.
So he started his career.
Comment. I thought that was, that hit the nail, right?
Yeah. He started his career at Ford and spent time at Tesla, spent time at Apple, and then Farley had recruited him back. And I was told that because Apple decided to lean into the software and not the hardware and software together. And I was told that Farley offered him the keys to the castle. That's effectively what he's getting with the Model E, right? He's effectively the CEO of the Model E team. So I think that's a huge deal. Deal.
And Ford has been making moves all these years. I mean, it's almost been nonstop, right? Starting with 2019 is when they announced the China 2.0 strategy. And I remember putting China as a standalone business after all these years. I mean, like, right? And it's
before then they were managing Asia out of Thailand.
Yeah,
Thailand,
that,
remember?
China and Asia Pacific, kind of overlap. So
it was the weirdest structure because when I was there, it was APA, so Asia Pacific, Africa. So we were managing South Africa out of China, which was completely weird. But they've kind of figured things out. China is now, I think, going to be a strength for them. So the other person that I'll bring up is Lynn Longo. She was hired by Volkswagen Group to manage
digital part of it.
Carriot. Yeah. So she's the
CTO.
chief technical officer now, I think. So she came from automotive, but she was always on the digital side of automotive. So I think you're starting to see that we have to give Ferrari props for being one of the first to lean into having high-tech people, right? Because a lot of their team comes from, I forget the CEO's name, but his old semiconductor company. And so I'm telling you, we're going to see more and more of this, where high-tech people with some automotive experience, whether they're Tesla people, whether they're Rivian people, they're going to come to these, big giants. Because if you look at Rivian, the guys in management, their shares are already vested. So they can go somewhere else. They can go sit on the beach probably, right? But, if I was a Ford employee, I'd be pretty excited, a little nervous. But, they're making some bold moves. And that move that Ford made is going to push all the other automakers to make bolder, strategic business moves
and
too.
also you're seeing this different way of doing things from the legacies and the startups is especially comparing Rivian and Ford taking reservations for their respective vehicles. So Ford stopped it,
Right.
and whereas maybe the startups sometimes you wouldn't see them say we will stop taking reservations before it stopped it. So that's kind of different, right?
Right.
And now you're going to see these, the Doug Fields. For Stellantis, it would be the guy named Ned, who came from Amazon, to be more prominent, and also the lady who spoke at the Mobility and Lease.
Annalise Richard.
Becoming more prominent and at the forefront of facing, the whether it's the media or the industry. And
so, really quickly, shameless plug, they posted her keynote on their website. So the keynote that she did for Mobility Conference for us is posted now on their website. She wanted to stay behind Tavares' big meeting or conference that was just a couple of days ago that we're talking about. So if you now watch her keynote, it dovetails well with what Tavares was talking about a couple of days ago.
And so going over to Stellantis, I think it's worth talking about basically on what China, what was said, what was, basically it was rumored before that was confirmed, right? So taking control of the Peugeot and giving control of the Citröen brand to the Chinese partner, and opening up DPCA to third parties. That was an interesting play. And then on the Jeep side, just one plant. I think it's the Changsha plant where currently Jeeps are made. And the 75% equity stake increase, I mean, those were already announced before. But it looks like the priority is not driving sales, but getting costs down and making sure they're profitable. So, but if you look at China, 2030, their global net revenue goal was 300 billion euros. China is only 20 billion euros. So it's still, compared to the other big legacies, China will still be so small for Stellantis.
Which was a bit weird to me because it just, they have a couple of significant brands that I think they could grow.
Also, speaking of, Opel announced they're going to be all electric by 2028. I feel like there's a chance that they will bring Opel back to China, because Opel within Stellantis is one of the more resonating brands in China. Back in the GM days, Opel were on sale as imports, but decided to pull out. But because they in the slides they said basically 6 brands in China, so that would be Jeep, Peugeot, Citroën, Alfa Romeo, and Maserati. So there's one other one missing.
You know this, and I know this, really quickly. Jeep is the only one that has any strength currently, in my opinion. The rest of these 4 other brands that you had mentioned are pretty weak.
True.
Here.
But I think in terms of the history, Jeep is more global, but Peugeot and Citroën, I actually believe, has a more brand equity in China, even more so than Jeep, because of the longer history.
Right.
The Fukan days, right? The 308, Peugeot 308 that started producing in early days. So at least, DPCA is on the way back, I think. And they're trying to give control. I think Citroën is doing pretty well, finally.
Yeah.
Relatively.
And I think it should be noted that Stellantis, a disproportionate amount of their profits come out of the United States. So I think Tavares is also trying to balance profitability and revenue coming out of other regions, right?
Yeah, I would still expect some kind of a standalone China announcement, maybe from their, China-based executives, because it was, not much, to tell the truth. And he did answer a couple of questions on China about the asset light model and what that meant. But I think the priority is just get, he said he doesn't want to be saddled with capacity. So that's why you see the one plant of the GAC-FCA joint venture and offering the DPCA manufacturing hub to third parties. Who they're going to be, we don't know, but it's a lot more liberal now of utilizing existing manufacturing capacity. That, and that's what China wants. So,
and that's what China has to balance, right? Because the central government would rather not add a ton of capacity into the system. They would rather convert old capacity to new capacity. But the local governments, they want more jobs. They want new factories because it's more tax revenue, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's this push and pull from the central government to the local government. And so I wonder, Lei, if our friend Sam Chung is going to have any surprise announcements for Jeep at the Beijing Auto Show.
Gotta start, putting that battery electric model first and foremost. They really need that. It's way overdue, right?
Yeah, I feel bad for Sam because he's doing his best, and there are still a lot of loyal Chinese customers for the Jeep brand, but he's got this onslaught from one company, one brand. That's Great Wall. He's got this onslaught.
Pretty much.
That is,
pretty much all the Chinese OEMs, Geely, Great Wall, Chery, that are the kind of the brand dilution, I think, over the years, just really slow. But, considering over the past year and a half that Stellantis was putting China in the back burner because they had to deal with a merger first. So, It's understandable, but now you really have to move and speed of execution, right? That was what both Carlos and Jim talked about.
And we should explain a little bit about what happens in these strategy meetings, in these boardrooms, in order for these huge announcements to come out, because they're looking at their balance sheet, they're looking at their flexibility, they're looking at the macroeconomic growth factors in each of the regions that they play in. They're looking. So one of the things that is happening a lot right now is the risk management teams at these huge legacy companies. Risk management means, where's their risk around the world? How do we deal with it? And it's part of the strategy, right? Do we move factories? Do we add suppliers that don't have facilities in the Ukraine and Russia? So because the risk management teams, their priority is business continuity. And so to your point, right, Rivians and these smaller companies, they don't have these huge risk management teams that know so well how the company operates and how to create alternatives. And so that's one of the factors, because it's going to be unpredictable over the next several years, not just because of battery and chip supply, but because of everything else that's going on in the world that's unfortunately still, pretty tragic.
It seems that the European automakers are over proportionally more exposed to the Russian, Ukrainian, If you look at, right, not only are they stopping production in Russia, they're stopping production at home, right? Volkswagen, BMW, they're suspending production at some plants, right? They're major plants because of exposure to the Ukrainian supplier base. It's not huge, but it still affects them.
And remember, Volkswagen has a factory in Bratislava. So in Eastern Europe, they're building, and they're building in Poland. Unfortunately, those are risk factors because of Russia. And honestly, it feels insignificant to be talking about, car manufacturing when this stuff is going on, but it's just something that is important to understand. But anyways.
Yeah, I saw that interview with Toto Wolff talking about, the schedule this year and not racing in Russia, right, in the Grand Prix. And he said, everything is just insignificant.
Yes.
Anyways, so
let's talk February sales, because we expected smaller numbers because of Chinese New Year, but maybe you can kind of give us your take really quick.
Right,
of an
not
overview.
much surprises. Everybody fell month on month, pretty much on February, but BYD is kind of the outlier, right? It fell too, but not by much, a couple of thousand units from January.
Can I address the elephant in the room? Ford called
Yes.
BYD out by name in an announcement this week. And to BYD's defense, the factory that they're building the NCM batteries out of for Ford Mach-E is in Xi'an. Xi'an had a 6-week lockdown, 5-week lockdown because of COVID. So effectively, there's no production.
This is the exact same reason that affected ID sales at the end of last year because the outbreak in Ningbo. A lot of the suppliers were involved. And Shanghai Volkswagen has a plant in Ningbo. So these things, and plus the fact that you have to insure your own, right? BYD is pretty much doing 100,000 units a month, give or take. And remember one number that BYD chairman Wang Chuanfu threw out there was they had, I think, 160,000 backlog of orders or something. I haven't confirmed that numbers, but it's a huge number. And March, I'm pretty sure they're gonna do over 100,000 units, barring any disaster happening in the supply chain. And from March there on out, it's gonna be pretty much 100,000 units every month. That's the trajectory. And I heard from a friend of mine who's in China, and he basically commented that the 1.5 million units is not even the high end of BYD's internal projections. So we'll see. But like I said at the beginning of the show, it's gotten all of a sudden cloudy because, right, you're raising prices. You're still facing the chip and the battery crunch. And you wonder, right, if BYD does 1.5 million units, that's what? A quarter of the 6 million projected for China. That's crazy. But then again, BYD is, out of all of these competitors, controls its own destiny, right? That's the way I put in my article.
Yeah,
they're pretty much integrated.
That's what I was just going to point out, right?
But still,
the one thing that's also hanging over every manufacturer's head in China is the fact that as long as COVID zero strategy is here, there's always going to be that risk of
sporadic
a lockdown
outbreaks
due to it's
you can't really control.
Right, because that's completely out of their control, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
and the other thing I'll say is really every single year at the start of the year, you don't really look at the January and the February numbers because of the December pre-buy effect and the Chinese New Year effect. You look at the March numbers and you look at the Q1 numbers. So basically, we have to see who's going to rebound the most, right? And Q1, based on Li Auto is the only one so far that have given any guidance that they're expecting right around 30,000 units. And they did roughly 20,000 units in the first 2 months. So it's basically 10,000 a month in Q1. And if we look at the big three of Li Auto, NIO, and XPeng, if we look at their product launch cadence, NIO is supposedly the one that should have a huge year because 3 models are coming. But then at the same time, I feel like NIO is also, they're due to perform, right? And this is a lot of pressure, I think, for them. Because if you don't deliver, then, then the questions will pile on.
Well, degree of difficulty for sure is highest with NIO because new factory, new products. XPeng is there, but they've already launched the P5. So the G9 is going to be
later this year.
Super important launch for them, right?
And that's why I say NIO has the best chance to beat all these other guys because it has the product cadence. And Li Auto is, we're supposed to talk about the earnings a bit. Li Auto is just still in a league of its own because it's just with one model is still doing pretty well, right?
Yeah, so you'd expect that efficiencies to be gained after almost 2 years of selling the Li One.
Yeah, and that showed in the earnings, right? With the margins, continuing improving margins, over 22%, I think, for Q4, the highest among, the 3 US listed startups. And I think in the earnings, the 2 words that stand out for me are focus and Apple. What Li Xiang said, so he basically took a swipe at NIO and Expo. And he says, he didn't specifically say, but what I heard was, you guys are going to do your mobile phones, smartphones. You're going to do your flying cars. I'm just going to focus on the car and focus on efficiencies, focus on specifically the family target group. And he also mentioned the 0 to 1 kind of moment, that they've gone past that, and now it's 1 to 10. And where 10, he said, target is to be like the Apple of the smart EVs. Li Xiang being Li Xiang,
Which is bold.
But the other interesting thing I think he mentioned was the reason why he mentioned Apple was, basically as a car company, they have to meet 3 different type of demands: the superficial demand, the hidden demand, and creating something that the customer didn't know that they needed. But once they have it, right? So that's Apple.
Exactly. It's that unmet need. It's that unmet need that the consumer didn't know they needed.
And then the other is just reiterating their 20% target share of what they refer to as a segment of passenger vehicles. This includes ICEs, a segment above 200,000 RMB. They expect that segment to get to 10 million units in 2025. And they want to take, 20% of it? Well, obviously their target announced was 1.6 million in 2025. So there's still, that's still in place. So that's bold, right? Let's say they do 200,000 units this year, right? You can do the math. And he's basically saying that we're going to focus on the 200,000 RMB to 500,000 RMB. So nothing, I guess, nothing below 200,000 RMB. And basically the X01, which has been named the L9, maybe the L stands for Li and large, and 9 stands for the largest single digit number, right? So that's probably the biggest car they're going to have. And I expect that car to be in the renminbi 400, 420, 450,000 range.
Yeah. And we'll see it for the first time at the Beijing Auto Show.
Yeah. And it's supposed to have a different or newer EREV setup. So, and next are the 2 BEVs coming next year and every year after.
If you study Xpeng, NIO, Li Auto, I mean, they're not really in the mass market because their price points are a little bit higher, but it's great to see how contrasted their strategies are, because even Polestar, who made that Super Bowl announcement of like no nonsense, right? They come out with this video of an amazing looking car with a drone that flies out of it. Right? So what is that about? No nonsense. Look, if you're going to poke somebody in the eye and say, we're not going to go to Mars and stuff like that, and then you come out with a video a week later with a drone coming out of the back of your trunk.
I mean, just creating awareness about their design and circularity, right? They talk about, the seats and all the aluminum, different types of aluminum that can be reused, recycled, right? That's their message. So, but
well, the bottom line with Polestar is that they really, really need the 3 to succeed.
Yeah.
The SUV coming out of South Carolina, and then the other company that I think could compete with the Polestar 3 is Lotus. and they're going to be launching their vehicle.
End of this month.
Or revealing the vehicle.
End of
March
this month.
29th.
The 132.
Yes. And so we've spoken with a couple of people who have gotten a sneak peek, and they said it's nice. It's completely out of character for Lotus because they're, a small displacement.
Right. You think of the Elise
sports car manufacturer traditionally. Yes.
Evora,
yes.
Right?
And Evora.
You don't think of
Evora.
SUVs.
And you don't think of them being built in China either. So, but they're just following in the footsteps of Lamborghini, of Bentley, of Aston, of all these other companies that have launched SUVs. Porsche was the OG because once they launched the Cayenne, that's when they got into really high volume relative to historical sales. That's when they started getting high volume, and the Macan sells like hotcakes here too. So it's gonna create a new type of customer, attract new customers.
Porsche's success in China definitely started with the Cayenne because in the beginning nobody thought of Porsche as a sports car. At least in China, when a Cayenne came out, nobody bought 911s.
Yeah,
right? Now it's changing a bit, but
and you and I made fun of this last time, right? Where it's like the private schools, every woman or every mother, and I'm stereotyping, so every child is getting picked up in a G500 or a Cayenne. Now the Macans are coming out, and I think that's ironically more affordable for a younger demographic, and so you're seeing younger people buying Macans and stuff like that. And so
the other Volkswagen haven't announced the ID sales. They usually do at the beginning of the month, but it looks like from the early information that SAIC Volkswagen, as part of the SAIC group announcement, did 6,300 NEVs in February. So that sounds good. Not sure how much IDs in there, but hopefully they'll get back to track. Because ID, remember, there's no new models for ID this year in China. They're stuck with the 5 models that they have.
So they're going to focus on opening more retail locations.
Yeah, and focus on building up the Volkswagen Anhui MEV EB plant, which will launch the first model, I think, toward the end of next year.
Well, so we should throw a little breadcrumb that hopefully in the next week we'll launch a new Max episode that'll give a bit more clarity on Volkswagen strategy in China.
And you already said something that was said.
Yes.
Yeah, and I did as well. So the other thing, I guess, that Cruise and Waymo getting paid licenses, right, from the CPUC. And then did you hear this? That Geely's E-Car X is looking to SPAC in the US? That's crazy.
I don't know why they believe there's a market for a SPAC.
$4 billion valuation.
I know, but SPACs are dead, especially if they're... So E-Car X is technically in the UK, I believe, right? So
they're active in China.
It has Geely's fingerprints all over it.
Models
right? Yeah.
Geely has.
So right then and there, I understand that they're trying to extract value, but Chinese SPACs are kind of radioactive a little bit. So let's see how that works out.
I think we've covered pretty much everything today.
Yes. So let's open the room up. We'll continue to talk. One thing I did want to note is that as Rivian had made that announcement of the price increase, and then the following 48 hours, that mea culpa, I did notice our friend Taylor also got a price change for his Model Plaid S. So I don't know if Taylor wants to have a little bit discussion about that. But as a customer, oh my God, I just think of it though, Lei. If I bought an Apple phone, right, and it was already $1,400, right? Okay, but it's going to be 8 weeks for it to ship. First of all, you need to deposit $150. Boom, right? So you've taken my money now, and you're using it for something else. And now you're going to tell me that I need to pay $1,800 for this thing or $1,600? It's just absolutely, there needs to be some sort of customer protection on that, right? And I don't care what the contract says. I really don't care what the fine print says, because if you want to raise it by 2-3%, okay, whatever. But 20% is just absolutely mind-boggling. So, anyways,
the only other thing I'll add is throw out some numbers there, because Hyundai and Kia, similarly, they announced their 2030 plans a couple of days ago. So Hyundai is aiming 1.87 million BEVs annually by 2030, and Kia 1.2 million. And huge investments, 95.5 trillion Korean won. I don't know how much that is in US dollars, but it sounds
it's a lot of zeros. There's a lot of zeros.
Like tons of BEV models, and just look at the battery capacity requirements is huge. Hyundai 170 gigawatt hours, Kia 119, Stellantis 400 gigawatt hours of battery capacity by the end of the decade. 75 BEVs, 5 million annual BEV sales by 2030, Stellantis. Okay.
Yeah.
Ford, 2 million EVs annually by 2026. Oppo didn't announce numbers, but 2028 they're all electric. So that's why I say this week was interesting, because you're hearing all these legacy automakers. I've never seen so many announce these huge moves in 1 week. Right? It's almost like they're sending a message to the startups, to the ones who are leading. Right? Here we come.
Yeah. Well, in these numbers, these huge gigawatt hours that you're kind of throwing around, that creates the tipping point and the critical mass for battery swapping, for other types of business models from a battery standpoint. There was even Volvo on Twitter had posted that they're experimenting with wireless charging, right? So there are going to be new ways of dealing with range anxiety in the next 3, 4, 5 years. Battery swapping is probably going to take hold in other parts of the world for sure, right? Because NIO this week had announced that they have an SOE partner that's going to help them launch swapping services outside of China. So to me, that means Europe. And yeah, if somebody's going to help you fund that stuff, then great. But I still kind of wonder, Lei, if NIO is going to make that exclusive, like a 1-to-1, or will they try to sell and license their technology to other premium automakers in order to kind of amortize some of that risk, or de-risk that business model a little bit?
Yeah, but I think they've said on the record that they will be open to that. But now, basically, they have a competitor in CATL, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a matter of, why would I, battery swapping, what makes it so I would choose NIO over CATL, or one over the other, right?
Yes.
So,
because CATL will undercut them without question. Oh, one thing I should note that I didn't post on Twitter yet, and I should. The place where I live right next door to Shimao, which is, if you ever watch the news and they show Beijing, there's that location where there's the big screen in this plaza. So I live right next door to that. And yesterday they're putting up a Cadillac Lyric stand. So I'm going to go back today because I have to go pick up my kids, and I'm going to go check it out. So I'm really excited. I think,
and that place is becoming a hub for brands, automotive brands. Yeah, temporary stands. Right, Toyota was there for the Olympics.
So anyone who's seen old pictures, they know that there's a permanent retail store for XPeng there, and then in the mall, so both sides of this huge plaza that's covered by this huge screen, there is a iWays retail store. So, and then down the road, and you know this, right across the street from Central Park, there's an ArcFox retail location or dealership. Remember that old Volkswagen dealership that was on the corner of Chaoyangmen and across the street? That's become an ArcFox dealership, Lei.
Yeah, there's used to be the Mercedes-Benz, Mercedes-Me in Citröen. Now it's somebody else, right?
Yeah, it closed.
So,
but that's that's a reflection of how fast things move here in China as well. So
I'll just say that the topics that we talked about today, if I take off my fair and impartial hat, I really am rooting for these legacy automakers. I think you are as well, coming from Detroit. That they can be relevant, and right, it can't just be Tesla all the time. It can't just be the startups, and somehow they'll find a way. Some of these legacy automakers are going to be, right, what Ford is doing. Capital market might not like it, but I want them to succeed.
You and I knew this. They would never.
Seriously.
Yeah, no, for sure. But you and I knew that they were never going to look the same. In order to be successful, They would have to completely change themselves.
This is why this is such an exciting time to be observing what's happening, and it's fascinating.
The one thing that I will say is, if I was part of the Ford Blue team, I would want to make sure I had a lifeline in 5 years to head over to the Model E team.
Right.
Because if they do a good job, that means in 10 years that the Ford Blue team is like a skeleton crew, right?
Yeah. Somebody asked the question on whether it'll be in terms of employees, and basically Kumar, he answered everything's on the table. So that's basically yes. That people will lose their jobs, So, but that happens, right? That you have to make the tough moves.
Well, we expect you and I have small children, Lei. So you and I expect them to keep learning new skills. Just
right? Like RJ
Otherwise,
has to eat up.
They're going to get left behind.
Right? this thing, that.
So yeah, I emailed a couple of people that we know that you talked to recently on the conference, and tried to get their take on it. And so I think what we'll see, and we've already started seeing this, and you and I are starting to get much more attention from Western media as well, which is great because we have an opinion. I think we have crystal balls, right? Because we've been following this for forever over here, and it's bound to happen over there.
Yeah, and
it's going to be a little bit messy.
I was talking to one of the PRs of a AV startup, let's just say one of the California companies, and she was telling me, within their circle of all these AV startups, these different founders, they're totally different. Some, like Maxwell Joe, likes to be out in the front. Some are very reserved.
Yep.
Some are very low key. And though they might have both, all came from, Baidu, right? Maxwell Joe said, right, that the two people that he used to work with Baidu are now senior execs at two other AV companies.
Yeah. Pony and WeRide came directly out of Baidu.
That's the dynamic. And I was going to say that there was some chatter on legacy executives not driving Teslas to right. So I'm gonna.
Well, not driving EVs.
I'm gonna write a little recap of my Hertz Model 3 experience.
Nice.
I think I'm qualified to say things after driving it for a week, and it was eye opening, as I said last episode. So I'm gonna write something and post it.
Let me request something. Let me request something though, Lei. Can you also look at this as this is a Tesla specific feature or Tesla specific advantage versus because you didn't have to go through all these. First of all, you were in California, so charging stations are much more numerous.
Yeah.
Full stop. And then the second part is because you're at a Tesla, you have superchargers, so it's more convenient, and that's their advantage, right? That's why they sell thousands and thousands of cars. So maybe can you also specify? I don't know how this experience is if you're a non-Tesla driver, right? Like, I'll give you an example. A friend of mine just bought an Ioniq 5.
I like that car as well because I test drove it for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, and so First of all, I don't know I guess you could buy an ID in the United States. So, but I want to understand his calculus. Why not Tesla versus, or an ID? Why did he buy the Ionic 5? Because I don't think it's a wrong decision, but it's interesting to note, right? Because now that there is more than one game in town,
Personally,
what compels you to buy one versus another,
personally speaking, I think a lot of it has to do with the HMI. I also felt the Ionic 5 in terms of HMI, in terms of what you see in front of you and, filling with the screens is better than the ID. But obviously, Tesla tops them all.
Most of our listeners are very educated in electric vehicles, but just for those who might be wondering, HMI stands for human machine interaction.
Yeah.
Or the UX, another word for UX or user experience.
When you step in a car and trying to figure out where the functions are, that's how you gauge how easy it is.
Because it should feel natural, right? So when you pick up an iPhone, it kind of just makes sense.
Exactly, and that's the experience and the feeling I had with the Tesla. That's where it wins.
Johnny Ive has said that simple design is really, 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 to design something simply is very, 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 very tough. So, and we've seen that. I believe we see that with the clunkiness of the ID UI, right? I also, because it's not just where what the layout of the touchscreen is, it's also the latency.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're used to an iPhone or an Android that has instant recognition of you touching the screen, and then you go into your car and it takes literally a half a second for it to react.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bad UX.
Of the Model 3 I rented was brand new, right? Less than 500 miles. So everything was new. Everything worked. I mean, there was not a glitch. Nothing. There was no glitch whatsoever. Everything worked. So
yeah. So I learned to appreciate that stuff when I first started using a Macintosh computer, and
I switched last November.
Recently.
I can't go back.
It's amazing, right? It just works, exactly. Right? It never becomes a brick. Oh well,
not yet.
So I'm completely biased. So for those people that are PC people, don't get upset because I'm completely biased.
And also the fact that I had this Tesla rental not only as a kind of a fact finding for myself, for my selfish self, but also it's part of the vacation, right? It's part of the vacation for the family to see it and kind of. Right? Yeah.
Well, because your daughter wanted you to rent one, right?
It's not cheap. It's $900 for a week's rental. It's not cheap, but I thought it was worth it because it's part of vacation, right? So it's
think about it too, Lei. How much did you save in gas, right? Like
right. I mean,
because you drove a lot, I think.
I drove almost 600 miles.
Yeah, so that's 2 tanks probably,
so,
right?
As you know, the gas prices just all of a sudden went up like crazy last few days.
So SF hit $5 a gallon.
I think when I was there last week, it was like $4.50-ish. So you can do the math, right? I think charging only total was around $60, but I didn't have to pay because Hertz had that limited charging for free before March 1st. So it was perfect.
So I'm going to talk to my friend and find out, because he just got it delivered to him on Monday, or he picked it up on Monday, the Ioniq 5. I think it's a great looking car.
In the US, right? It is. I like it. Yeah.
So it's like the modern day Volkswagen Golf. It looks, it's bigger. It's much bigger, but.
Yeah, and it's even more spacious in the Model 3, I feel.
Well, that's all design, right?
Yeah.
Because even if it is actually not more spacious, design-wise and color-wise and angle-wise, it really creates the feel for you, right? It's like painting a room really dark. It makes the room feel smaller. If you paint it white, it makes the room feel larger. And these optical illusions, they all matter. And so, that's... And it actually goes back to Ariane Walker talking about familiarity, right? With the Alexa Auto. And I think that's so important. But we United States, we as in the United States just needs more product, right? A little bit more diversity when it comes to who we can pick. And Kia Hyundai are crushing it already in the United States anyways, right? So I don't see them losing momentum because of that.
And so it's just housekeeping coming up. I think this is a very important week for China because of the 2 sessions. And 2 sessions means all of these proposals and motions submitted by these members of MPC and CPPCC who are the automotive CEOs. So Li Shufu, right? He talked about, a motion on standardizing swappable batteries across brands, across stations. So there will be a bunch of these submitted that will be circulated. And then it's almost 3:15. So you know what that means. You're going to see a lot of recalls. So all these brands are trying to avoid being shamed on CCTV. And then before you know it, it's all to China.
And I think it's important to note that, with these Chinese EV makers, the majority of them already have a product out, right? So their priority right now is to scale and to launch manufacturing of their new products without many hiccups. So behind the scenes, they're working with the central government to ensure that battery capacity increases, that supplies for raw materials for batteries and chips and things like that is not interrupted.
This is definitely on the agenda of very high up in China as well. And I'm sure you're going to hear a lot of key words mentioned in the government work report relating to the auto industry. And battery swapping has been in the work report, I think at least the last 2 years, encouraging the buildup of the infrastructure.
And now that one of China's largest companies is putting their weight behind battery swapping, it's only going to be even more of a priority for China, right?
Yeah, but again, battery swapping, it's not going to be the majority. It's going to play a role, but I think the normal charging will dominate. But the battery swapping will have its place, and there will be players involved in it. But I don't think it will become the majority form or the dominant form of charging.
No, I think it's going to be in addition to, like I said last week, just another option for other automakers and customers. So speaking about batteries, we should congratulate Mujibi Jazz. Our Next Energy just announced that they raised another $65 million of capital. So he's going to have that hybrid battery pack, right? That is 2 chemistries. So that's how he's going to try to tackle increasing range.
Yeah.
And
but then you have that Wall Street Journal article on what it means to be breakthrough, right? Did you see that one?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That it's just the 7 to 8% growth every year.
That's pretty good though. I don't, 7. Yeah. I mean, but I actually had a post because I posted about that article in my newsletter this week saying that to me, it's as much about educating the consumer about not actually needing 350 miles of range on a vehicle, right? Because remember, Mike Granoff said that if you could get 130 miles of range on a Model 3, it would be less than 25, or it would be no more than $25,000. So
that's why, the standard range, I had an option. Hertz has an option to rent a standard range or a long range. And I was like, California, why would I need a long range? Standard range, 250 to 60 miles is more than enough. And it proved to be exactly that. I mean,
because you said you didn't have any anxiety, right?
No, not at all. Because it's everywhere. If you click the lightning icon, right, it just pops up everywhere, And they have, the 250 kilowatt, third generation, or the highest power charging selections, supercharger stations you can select.
Yeah, dude. And you were on vacation too, so it's not like you're in some super, super hurry to get anywhere and you need something charged in 2 minutes. Right?
Yeah, right. And the only thing I don't have is owning it for extended period of time, like more than a year. Then my assessment might be different because there will be ownership issues, right? There will be repair quality issues that I haven't seen. But in the week that I've had it, it's there's no complaint.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's why JD Powers does that 90-day quality assessment, right? But that brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Lee, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at LeiXing77. That's LEIXING77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.